We're here with Lamar Slay, and we're talking about capital campaigns. Lamar, we just, as a church, we want to raise all this money, and we do a capital campaign, and we raise the money. We did it, right? Like, that's it, right? But talk to us a little bit about follow through throughout the whole process, communication, and what that looks like.
It's so important. It's probably the number one complaint lodged against campaign companies is, you led us in a great campaign, but we haven't seen you since. That follow through is really, really important. And I think there's several things you can do very practically to help with that. One is you need to show appreciation to those people who gave. And understand that when you have a campaign and you raise the money, in reality, a large part of what you've done is you've raised the commitments. You haven't raised the money because people have to follow through on those commitments. And so it's important to show appreciation to those donors, those people who made commitments. And we're so afraid of confidentiality and afraid people think the pastor looks at their giving statements. How do you effectively do that? Well, one of the things is that the communication that the pastor sends, in that communication, he can say, the financial team shared with me that you had made a commitment. Never mention amount, and many pastors don't want to say the amount. But do a disclaimer like that where they know you're not sitting there looking at what they gave. To have dinners, to have events for those people who've made commitments, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't make it a high publicity thing in your church, but you need to show that appreciation to them. I think another key is you've got to continue to cast vision and challenge the new people who come into your church over that 3-year period. And so typically at your new member class is not the time to do that. You don't want to hit people right off the bat. What one approach is for the pastor to say, hey, some of you have heard about the campaign we're in the middle of. I'm going to send you an invitation to come have coffee with me in a few weeks, and I'll explain that to you. So you just kind of give a disclaimer, hey, you're going to get this. Most new members would love to sit down in a small group with their new senior pastor and talk to him. So it gives him a chance to cast vision and let them know where the church is and where it's going. And you have to do that over and over again through the course of the 3 years. As you cast vision to those new families, you're not only going to learn who is with you from a financial standpoint, but the pastor's going to be able to meet new people one-on-one. He's going to be able to get to know them, find out who the leaders are. It's a very, very valuable thing to do. And how often you do that depends on your church. If you're growing really, really fast, you may need to do that every month. If you're not maybe growing quite that fast, maybe once a quarter. But periodically through the 3 years, you do that and you cast vision to those new people.
That's so good. And when you talked about looking at giving statements, I know that would be tough. And would you talk about sending those to the people? How do you let people know where they're at in their commitment level?
Yeah, that's real important. A lot of churches have entrepreneurs, they have business owners, they have salesmen that are on commission. And so they don't have a set income every month. And I'm amazed at folks that are maybe even in high earning jobs like that. They don't keep up with what they've given to the church because it's different every month. And so they come to the end of the year and maybe they're under what they had intended to give. So what I encourage pastors to do is to begin every quarter to send out a giving statement. Most churches do it once a year. They do it in January. If you do it every quarter, the pastor includes a letter that says, I've asked our financial team to include this letter in your giving statement. Again, letting them know he is not looking at the giving statement. He sends a thank you. He gives them an update on what's going on in the campaign and says enclosed is where you are on your commitment and on your regular giving. I encourage the church to do that at the end of every quarter, but to send a new one out early in December. And here's why. Those entrepreneurs, those salespeople, if they don't get their giving statement to January, it's too late to do anything about that year. But if you let them have that early in December, they see where they are. They have time to give what they had committed to give by the course of the year, both in the campaign as well as their tithes and offerings. So that's an inexpensive thing you can do. And here's the amazing thing. Every time you send that out, you'll see a bump in your giving the next month. It just happens like clockwork. Another thing that's important in the course of a 3-year campaign is that you have annual emphasis on the anniversary of the campaign for several reasons. One is, again, if they're new people, they have an opportunity to get in. Also, you can show appreciation to your donors, and you can let people know where they are in their giving.
Yep.
And so quarterly, we do a lot of different things quarterly, but on an annual basis, there's some very basics that you need to do. One is you need to challenge people that are new. That needs to be a strong emphasis. But if you do it at the end of the first year, you challenge those people to give for 2 years. That way they're new, they're giving less lengthwise, but they're also, everybody's finishing up at the same time. You don't have people, straggling through that. Another thing that's important is to give them a really good update on the project. If you're building a building and you can work it out with your general contractor, to have a lunch during the week, say, hey, this week, every day from 11:30 to 12:30, we're going to have some sandwiches at the building site. We want you to come by and see what we're doing. Yeah. But you only do that to those people who made commitments or who are giving. You don't have a lot of people show up at those events, but the mere fact you recognize them and you invited them means a whole lot. Oftentimes, we'll have people that will make those kind of commitments during the last year. We say, hey, you may have lost your job. You may have had a change in jobs or sickness. So you're way behind on the commitments you made 2 years ago. Here's what we're doing. We're going to wipe those commitments clean. We're going to ask you to make a commitment of what you can give for the last 12 months. If you're on track and you're giving, you just keep giving what you're doing. But if you're behind, and people that get behind on commitments, they feel guilty every time they come to church.
Right.
I mean, there's a guilt there. But to say, hey, we're wiping that clean, make a commitment of what you can do the last year. Many times we'll see as much as 50% of the total commitments we had at first come in over that last year because people can see 12 months. They can make that commitment and they'll do it. And then from an ongoing basis, every 4 to 6 weeks, you need something from the pulpit about the campaign. Yeah. It can be a life testimony. It can be just a financial update. I like to get the pastor to get a hard hat that says pastor, and every time something major is done on the building, they go out there and interview some of the workers. Say, hey, we're here today. They're putting up sheetrock. I'm going to talk to Joe here. Joe may be anything but a believer, but he's good at sheetrock. And so he interviews Joe. He asks him about him in 30 seconds. Again, every time something like that happens in the worship service, the next Sunday, you see a bump in giving. Great. It's like clockwork. Yeah. It's just a reminder. Yeah. And then the last thing I would say about this is that you've got to be transparent. You've got to let people know what's being done with the money they're giving, what the progress is, where they are as far as reaching the amount. You've got to be transparent with them and let them know that you're spending that money on exactly what you said you were going to spend it on. And that's really important. As a staff, you see that every day because you drive up and they're pouring concrete, they're putting up sheetrock, they're doing all these things. But the member who only comes a few times a month, he doesn't see all that. So you want to keep them up to date with the progress and let them know where you are as far as finishing out the campaign.